How are you all doing today? My name is John and I'm a photographer and I do a whole lot of different assortment of photography. But I want to talk about one of my favorite things today, which is travel photography. I'm going to be talking specifically about photographing Dry Tortugas National Park down off the coast of Florida. So the hardest part about photographing Dry Tortugas is just getting there. It is the hardest national park in the US to get to, and that's because it's about 67.9, so 70 if you want to round up, miles off the coast of Key West. And Key West is the southernmost point of the United States. It is all the way at the bottom of Florida. It's a set of islands. It's the last island in the set of the Keys. That's why it's called Key West. But it's about a 3.5 hour drive south of Miami if you want to go by car. You can also find ways to fly there as well, but they're going to be a little bit pricier because it's a very remote area. It's a much more remote airport to get to. So you're either going to be paying a lot more to fly there, or you're most likely going to be driving or flying into Miami and then going from Miami by car. So Dry Tortugas National Park is an island, and on this island is what they call Fort Jefferson, which was an old historical building that was originally built as a naval base for the United States to try to help defend against the coast when they were still becoming a new nation. And that was one of the only ways to really get into the southern part of the US was through just a narrow strait of currents, and Dry Tortugas was the closest place to it. So they built a fort there to try to house a small navy for the US so they could try to cut off any potential invaders. And then during the Civil War, it became a federal prison for people that they just had to send to a remote island to that they couldn't trust staying in the United States. So there's a ton of history behind it. But there's only two ways to get to it since it's an island. You can go by boat or you can go by a seaplane. So if you choose to go by boat, the boat trip is 2.5 hours one way, which means you'll be spending 5 hours on the boat in total. And then you have about 5 hours at the park if you choose to go by boat. Now the boat company is the Yankee Freedom Ferry Express. Yankee Freedom, yeah, I think that's it. Maybe it's just the Yankee Freedom Ferry. It's $190 for one adult ticket or $210 if you're going as an overnight camper. Now if you don't want to go by boat, the only other option is to go by seaplane. And you have to go through Seaplane Adventures, which basically flies out of the small airport in Key West, and they're the only seaplane company that goes out. So you do have to keep in mind that you may have to book several months in advance if you want to go by plane to Dry Tortugas. Now this is a lot pricier because it's faster, but since you're going by plane, there's a lot more cost due to the ticket. So for a 2.5 hour trip, which is what I did, it's $361 for an adult ticket, and that gets you only 2.5 hours on the island. Or you can pay $634 for an adult ticket, and that will get you about 6.5 hours on the island, but you'll also be paying $634 for one day. So for your average tourist, the things you can do there at the park is go on a tour of the fort, explore the fort on your own, or go snorkeling, or just kind of hang out on a remote little beach. There's not a ton of things to do, so if you're into history, if you love visiting national parks, maybe you're doing something where you want to go see all the national parks, definitely worth going. But if you're a family and you've got small kids, or you just want to be doing something fun, this might not be the excursion for you because of how costly it is. You've already paid to be in Key West, most likely have more fun doing something around the Key West area than lugging your family onto a 5-hour boat ride just to go sit on an island that your kids might get bored at for a few hours. But then when it comes to people like me, the photographers, Dry Tortugas is a giant playground. Only having 2.5 hours there for me felt like I only had 2.5 minutes in total because of all the different photographs I wanted to go take of the fort. Some of the stuff you could be looking at is the windows, hallways, exterior shots, the outer walkway of the fort, people snorkeling, birds, some of the boats and planes that go by it. Then there's these posts off to the side, then of course the cannons, and then the interior garden is a nice giant pano shot that you can grab if you have the time to get all these different things. Now there are some photos that I missed out on because I just didn't have enough time to really explore the fort in general. I basically spent 2.5 hours photographing as many things as I could, and then used my last 10 minutes to just try to get some quick B-roll shots of the fort for one of my other videos talking about my adventure throughout Florida, which I'll link above. But it's one of those things, like some of the shots that I wish I could have got is more small detail shots, more we played around more with the windows looking outwards, because I only had time to get one of those shots, because there's just so many different angles and unique perspectives of this fort that you could spend an entire day coming up with new compositions to take of this incredible place. So some of the shots that I would still love to get would have required me having a longer stay at the fort, especially when it comes to astrophotography at Dry Tortugas. Now to get this, you have to be camping overnight, and it's not something you can just sign up a week before to go as a camper. Camping overnight requires you to reserve a spot 9 to 12 months in advance because of how popular it is. Now, one thing I just want to note, if you're going to camp overnight, most likely these are going to be your hardcore explorers, your hardcore national park people, and a bunch of photographers as well, most likely, because they've all gone out there to go get these amazing shots of the fort at night with the stars behind it. So one thing you want to keep in mind, now this is just like, it's a right-of-way argument. It's kind of like this gray area which you kind of have to figure out for yourself. Is I always personally like to get to the spot I want to set up super early, so that way as it's closer to the time that I want to be shooting at, someone's not already there or someone's not trying to cut me off. If you're there first and you can set up first, then I believe you have the right of way to that spot. And if someone really wants to set up next to you, they need to ask for your permission, or they have to understand that after they take their shot, it's your right to go back and set up there. That's just a little bit of a photography tangent, but that's just how I feel on the manner. If you see someone set up and they've been there for a while, don't ask them to move. So some of the basic things that you'll need for this trip is hat, sunglasses, sunscreen, maybe a swimsuit if you want to get in the water, and then shoes that are going to get wet because you're most likely to be stepping onto the beach or into the water area, so don't wear your favorite pair of shoes and socks. So for my fellow photographers out there, the things you'll want is your camera, which makes sense, and then for lens, I'm using a 24-70 to film myself, and that's what I always kind of carry with me. So this is my old one if you don't know what that looks like. I really like this lens because it's pretty much like a workhorse lens because it can get wide enough, which is when it's all the way punched in, so that you can get a nice panoramic shot, or if like you want to take a set of portraits or an up close detail, you still have that room to just zoom in a little bit and normal kind of words. But the other lens that I had with me was my 70 to 200. Now this was just on my other camera because I was out around Florida taking photos of animals as much as I could. So if there's birds at this place you want to be taking photos of, maybe you want to try to get a shot of the lighthouse in the distance, or maybe just something that a 70 to 24 or 24 to 70 can't get. This is a good backup lens to have just in case you wanted to try a different unique perspective. Now if you can fit a third lens in your bag, or if you're traveling with it, you could even bring a wider angle lens than your 24 to 70. This is a 17 to 40. So this if you want to get a super wide pano shot, but don't worry if you can't bring one, because what you can always do is take your 24 to 70, keep stuttering on that, and you can take 3 different shots, or maybe you take 5 different shots looking in the same direction. Then you can go into Lightroom or Photoshop and combine them all into a giant panorama. But when you do panoramas, you just want to make sure there's overlapping data in each shot, or if there's overlapping details in each shot, just so that the program can see that the photos are meant to be next to each other and can evenly put it all next to each other. Another little gadget you can bring with you if you have the time to do shoots with it is a GoPro, or maybe you have a waterproof camera, protective housing, or just a full cage for your camera to take water photos with. Because since you're surrounded by water, there's a ton of shots you can get underneath of the fish, or maybe you can get some cool shots of the fort in water. Or a lot of the times people like to do that half in, half out, where you have the water line directly even with the camera. So that way it gives you this cool little look where you kind of get underneath the water and above the water in the same shot. That's just a little thing to keep in the back of your mind when you go out there, because it just adds to the amount of variety of shots you can get at one location if you can take photos above and below the water level. And then I almost forgot this gadget. This is a polarizer. And why do I have a rubber band around the case? I'll get to that in a second. Also, always keep a little lens cloth with it too, just in case you need to wipe it off real quick or clean it. But the reason I keep a rubber band on my polarizer is just because sometimes the way some of these polarizers or ND filters work, when you attach it to your camera, if you attach it too tightly, it can get stuck. So what I like to do is I take the rubber band and basically put it around the edge of the two different pieces of glass on the polarizer. And that allows you to just get a much stronger grip on the two different pieces to twist it off with a little bit more force or grip. Because what happens is sometimes it's so tight to the piece of glass on your camera that you just end up spinning the outside ring of the polarizer and you're not actually able to get it off your camera. So that's about it for my quick summary of the Dry Tortugas National Park. If you want to see more of my work, check out my Instagram or check out my website. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll love to answer them if there's any that I think I can help you with. Sometimes people just leave random remarks and I can't do anything with that, but if you have a question in regards to Dry Tortugas National Park, I'll do my best to answer it. And as always guys, let's recap.